Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Tupel and welcome to Cake or Fake, the edible remake. This is our second episode of Cake or Fake and we are making some really cool cake knife serving sets. These are a wooden craft item from the Woodworkers Guild of America. And these particular serving set, this particular serving set was made by Ashley Hugh. And she is one of our, and she wears all the hats. I just adore her. But she is one of our creatives on many of the different channels for creative cake design and all of our lovely let me just say, can I just start over for a second because I have had a morning. My brain is not working, I will tell you that much. But Ashley Huff is amazing. That's all you really need to know. But she does knitting tutorials, sewing tutorials. She does all sorts of different things for us. And so she has provided our lovely wooden cake knife serving set, which is just really cool. First of all, I want to show you guys like the texture and just the depth of colors, and they're just so cool. They've got all sorts of different types of wood being used as well. So this is one of those projects that I was actually really excited about because in my first look of these, I was like, oh, these will be so easy to make. I mean, there's a lot of colors that will have to match, and there's obviously a little bit of texture. Well, it comes through as texture, although it's really just color because this is a perfectly smooth piece. But I have to say, these proved to be a little bit more challenging than I had hoped, mostly because of their shape, right? Like we've got a gravity-defying piece on both of these because when they sit flat on a surface, you've got an elevation both on this end as well as right in the middle. And we all know that cake doesn't really like to do that. So that was probably the biggest challenge in creating this tutorial for all of you. And speaking of tutorials, if you have not already downloaded the tutorial, please do. I've got a written version for you so you can kind of follow along. I know some people are really visual like myself and videos are better. Some people prefer to kind of just get a little bit of instruction through a download and a tutorial, which is great too. So please download that. You can always ask questions along the way. We've got some people helping us behind the scenes that kind of guide me a little bit with your questions. So please let me, answer as many questions as I possibly can for you. So, all right. So let me get started here. We're going to switch over to our overhead camera because there's so much to see. First of all, this project was not made out of cake. I cheated just a little bit, you guys. And the reason for that was really, again, because of the angles of the knife itself. These serving sets just have so much dimension to them as far as like that curvature. I won't say cheated, cheat's the wrong word, but using rice cereal treats to create something that has all those extra curves and needs that extra support is really just the best way to do it. I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely easier than trying to make this out of cake, and you'll see why in a moment. But when we are in, and that's not to say that we can't make this out of cake. Hi, Carly from Seattle. I'm excited that you're here. Thank you so much. I'm excited about this one too. Again, I think this is just a really cool project. It's something a little bit more unique and different than what we're normally used to making out of edible mediums. So that's what's really cool. Again, the biggest challenge with all of these curves, this top curve would be completely fine made out of cake. But when you incorporate a bottom curve where, it's hard. I'm sure it's hard for you guys to see, but, when this is sitting flat on the table, these angles are really difficult to achieve in just cake. You have to add some additional supports in here, as well as in, well, really right here. This is probably this point and this point are the two pieces that just really you're gonna struggle in cake to be able to keep it upright and not collapse on you. Now, have I made things like this with cake in the past? Yes. But I have found it's usually not worth the extra effort. So basically what you have to do is create a base out of another medium. I have in the past used cardstock, and that's just a really thick paper. And then I've added in little braces at the top here to kind of hold those together. So you have some curvature of that piece of cardstock that needs to hold its shape, and you do that with excess structure through the center. And it does work, and it's great. But again, we're working with something that's so thin that to add in those structural supports, even within a piece of cardstock, it's just really, really challenging. And so when I find myself in situations like this, where structure is a real issue, rice cereal treats is my go-to. And this is not, new to the cake world by any means. I know you have all heard of using rice cereal treats in cake design. And I really think this is a project that lends itself well to rice cereal treats. And so I encourage you to pop over to either Instagram or our TikTok page and see how I made the rice cereal treats. I actually used my air fryer. I know. Hi, Helena from South Dakota. Thanks for joining us as well. So excited to have you all with us, because this is really just going to be a super fun project and relatable to lots of different items, not just our wood serving set. But what I really like about using Rice Krispie treats is, again, you get that structure that you need to add in the curvature in all of the locations that you need. And while I made these in the air fryer, there's a reason for it. And I think that's a really important piece of our little puzzle that we have going here. These are hard. They are not flexible like a traditional Rice Krispie treat. These, they're very strong. So when you're using your air fryer to make these, if you want a ooey gooey rice cereal treat, just melt your marshmallows and your butter in the air fryer, heat them up. What I like about it too is you can toast them a little bit and you get that like really cool, I don't know, like, what's it called? Like a s'mores. It's really, really toasty. You get that extra flavor. And then you stir in your rice cereal. And if you do it in a slightly different fashion, where you put your cereal in, you put your marshmallows and your butter on top, then when you mix it together, they actually form this really firm, hard piece of rice cereal treat, which is great for shaping and molding. And so when, just to kind of give you a piece of the puzzle here is, this is the rice cereal treats. I have my template on the back. When these first come out of the air fryer, I can press them down. I trim around them so that I've got the right shape. And while they're still moldable and bendable, they're still warm, go ahead and like bend and shape. One of the things that I use to help prop up my piece was just using the back of my scraper. And that has this like lovely bend to it. It kind of elevates that top piece. And then under this section here, I just curled up a little bit of paper towel, and of course, tuck that right underneath the parchment piece paper, which then gave the curvature the other direction. So you've got a few options as to how you want to structure this particular piece with rice cereal treats, but the key is really letting these things harden up. So let that harden up overnight, and then you can apply your chocolate at any step in the project. So if you want to, for instance, if you want a really flat piece of chocolate, go ahead and put a piece of chocolate down on the parchment paper and put your rice cereal treat that you've cut right on top of it. And then you can shape and mold it from there. You can also just ice it like you would a cake with chocolate. That's a really easy process as well. And that's basically what I've done here. So I've gotten us to that like next step in the process so that you guys didn't have to watch me make rice cereal treats, because while that process is super important, it's not really all that detailed, and so skipped right over that for you. But there is a video out there so that you can see that process and show you how to do that. And then once you get all of your modeling chocolate onto, sorry, not modeling chocolate, regular chocolate. This is just candy melt white chocolate. Once it's on there, you want this to be fairly smooth. And so I am just going to use a knife just to trim up my edges, because when we are putting another piece over top of this, whether you are using fondant or modeling chocolate, you want this surface to be as smooth as possible. So I'm just running my knife a few times to try to get that piece as smooth as I can, so that when I go to add my covering, I don't have lots of lumps and bumps. When we're working with cake that's covered in buttercream, for instance, whether it be an American or a Swiss meringue buttercream, the beauty of those is they're still a little forgiving, right? They are soft enough to manipulate, but firm enough to hold their shape. When it comes to chocolate, once that chocolate has set, it really can't be manipulated any further. We can cut it and we can trim it down. We can use some warmth to maybe shape and bend it, but we really can't press it. When we put a little bit of pressure to the modeling chocolate or the fondant onto something that has ridges, those ridges start to show through. And so having a really smooth piece is very helpful. Is it possible to get a smooth covering, even though these might have a little bit of, ridges and things? Absolutely. You just can't press as hard. You've got to change up your technique just a little bit in order to make that happen. All right, so what I'm doing again is just running a really sharp knife right over the edge, and I'm basically taking off any of that excess, either chocolate or rice cereal treat. You'll sort of see some of those rice cereal treats popping through. But this surface is now fairly smooth. In comparison, you can see, the handle I haven't gotten to yet, but it's not nearly as smooth. So take your time during this step of the process. Again, it'll make your life easier once you switch over to covering this with fondant or modeling chocolate. My preference is always modeling chocolate, just because it holds up better, it's pliable, you have a little extra time to work with it and really, mold it and shape it into what you want it to be. So I think that's my real preference for modeling chocolate, just that added time, right? Like, these things take so much time. I think that's one of the downsides to social media is that, we time lapse almost everything. So you guys can see what's happening. And, the reality is it's hours of time, not just, a 30-second little clip of what we're doing. So take your time, do what you need to do to get this exactly where you want it. Obviously we're working with a knife here, so be careful. Try to work away from yourself if you can, but sometimes you just got to turn it the other way. And then once you are satisfied with your shape, then you can move on to making your modeling chocolate colors, your fondant colors, those types of things. One of the other pieces that I really love using is this is a grater. This is a microplane grater, which I love. You can't just run it side to side. You have to do it at an angle and pull down. But this also is a wonderful tool for being able to shave down not only rice cereal treats, but chocolate. So this is just a really great way to kind of quickly get rid of those extra edges. And I think the other thing that I like about it too is it helps me turn those corners just a little bit better. You know, sometimes a knife, it doesn't want to do what you want it to do, especially when you're working with something firm like a rice cereal treat. So, you know, use your microplane grater. This one's rounded just a little bit. I also have, I have one that's flat as well. This one works really good too, because it's got that fully flat surface. This one works great for like making curvatures. So if you look at the end of this handle, you know, it's got an angle up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with my microplane. And I'm doing that with a microplane over using a knife because these rice cereal treats are really crispy, like super crispy. So if I were to cut into them with the knife, they have the potential of just cracking and breaking like the whole end off. And I will tell you, I had some trouble with that in the first round of making this. So that's why I switched over just to using the grater, and it worked really well. And, you know, so this is definitely the way that I would choose to kind of round. I mean, it's sort of like the same process that we use for making wood, right? Like imagine this as our sanding piece rather than using a piece of sandpaper. You know, we're using a microplane grater, which is just absolutely fantastic. It looks like Gabby's asking a wonderful question. Are there other substitutes for rice cereal treats that you could use? Yeah, I mean, you could do this all out of chocolate if you wanted. That would require a little bit more skill set in regard to working with chocolate. You could always make a mold, or you can just pour your chocolate fairly thick, let it set up a little bit, and then mold it and then trim it down. So yeah, I mean, you could definitely do that. Something other than rice cereal treats would also be cookies. I know, you know, some people would never think to use a cookie batter for something like this, but a sugar cookie dough, a gingerbread dough, something that has a little bit more structure. You know, I'm not sure I would venture into making this with like a chocolate chip cookie dough, but I definitely think there are some great mediums out there that could work. I think cookie dough is probably my first choice there, just because it, again, has great structure. And, you know, it's one of those things that it has a little bit more flavor compared to a rice cereal treat. But yeah, definitely give the cookie a try. I think that would be a fun experiment if you haven't played with using cookies as one of your methods of providing structure when you're making edible media or edible objects. But yeah, cookies are fun. They definitely have their place in making hyper-realistic cakes. We'll have to see if we can find a fun project to recreate that we use a cookie instead of rice cereal treats. I think that's a great idea. Thanks, Gabby, for asking that question. I think that's what I love about being able to, you know, interact with you guys while I'm doing this, is because, you know, your questions spur me to actually, you know, think about other things and consider other options that, I've done it with cookies before, but, some people haven't. So, and I think that's a great way to have an understanding of what all of your actions really are. Okay, so for this particular little utensil, the tip is also angled. So not only do we have an angle from, sitting flat, it angles upward, but we also have a little angle here at the top. And so again, it's important to go ahead and make sure that you're getting those angles right now. And one thing that I'll note as well is make these pieces just a little smaller than what you think you need. So for instance, this, I'm going to set this on top just so you can see. This is almost a perfect match from the main server. But remember, we're going to be adding extra layers of both modeling chocolate or fondant, whichever one you're using. Sometimes if they're too thick, you'll now change the shape of your object. They'll get a little thicker. So yeah, I think it's important to recognize that you do have to start with something that's a little smaller than what your final object is going to end up being. All right, so I am almost happy with where I'm at with this particular piece. And I love your idea, Carly. I think gingerbread would work really well. And I love your concept of, thinking about the fact that, yeah, it would also serve really well to the coloring. I think that's what we need to do when we're trying to create some of these pieces. Okay, so just looking from this perspective, I want you guys to see I am a little bit shorter than the original object. Again, that's on purpose. Remember, when we add our extra layers, we want to make sure that we have room to kind of expand on that. So I feel like I need just a little bit more shading here and maybe a little bit more shading in here. So I'm going to switch to the rounded one just for a moment to kind of get that curvature going. I find it a little easier than using the flat one when you're trying to create a curve. So I would say the bulk of my time with this project came here in this step. And then the second bulk of the project was really just color matching, trying to get the right colors for each of the different types of wood that were used in this project. So, the actual assembly of, once we have our rice cereal treat together, it went fast. Once I got past this point and I colored all my modeling chocolate, it actually went really fast. I was surprised by that. And of course, that's the fun part. And that's the part that I love the most, is kind of putting all of our pieces together. So, yeah. I'm curious to know what your favorite parts are. Like, are you hands-on? Do you really love like this part where we're like just shaping and really getting all of these pieces to be precise, or are you more like, get to the part where I can put it all together? Gabby, yes, color matching. So if you are a gold member with Creative Peak Design, you actually will get all of the ratios for color matching each of these pieces. So I will tell you that I have used white, sand, brown, and black of the satinized modeling chocolate to get to the color scheme that I wanted. And of course, there's different ratios. And it's really more about trial and error than anything else. You just have to kind of take small portions and try it. So, maybe you start with a little bit of white and a little bit of sand and a little bit of brown, and try to figure out what combination of colors work. So that's basically what I do for every new color that I'm trying to recreate. I am taking a little bit of each. So I will take, again, a little white, a little brown. Maybe that comes across as a little too red. Maybe I then take, sand because that's got a little bit more of a yellow to it. Or maybe if the brown is coming across as just way too, red, I'll add a little green in order to get there. So it really is more about trial than it is anything else. Obviously, using just some basic color theory is important as well. So knowing whether sorry, you guys, knowing whether you, oh boy, that's Theo. He's my little flipper. Maybe you guys can mute me for just a second. Hey. Okay, so sorry about this, you guys. This is the downside to filming in your own kitchen when you think dog is up here sleeping. Just mute me. Okay. What in the world? Okay. Sorry about that, you guys. So when we are color matching again, it's mostly trial and error, but know your rainbow, right? Like know all the colors in the color wheel. Have an understanding of which colors are complements to each other so that they mix well. Know which ones are opposite as well, right? Like, again, when I was saying if the brown is coming across too red, you add green, like that's the opposite of the red on our little color wheel. So that's going to actually tone down, adding that green tones down the red. So it makes it a little bit more neutral in color. So making sure that you have a really good understanding of what colors in the color wheel work well together and which ones are opposite is the biggest key to then being able to use trial and error, right? There are lots and lots of ways to mix your color, for instance. So I am using the pre-made colors of modeling chocolate from Staten Ice. I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. The first reason is modeling chocolate is the perfect consistency, right? As we start to add dull color to it and work with it, it starts to warm up and get soft, and it starts that fluid from just that little bit of gel that we put in there also softens the modeling chocolate. Now, if you give it time, let it rest, it tends to burn back up, but maybe not as firm as it was when it first started. So I like using pre-made modeling chocolate in colors just for that reason. Now, if you're using something like fondant, you definitely can do the same process using colored fondant, but you can also use gel colors. So, just because you might not have, I lost my mic, you guys. It's on a magnet. So just because you might have a different product that you're working with, modeling chocolate versus fondant versus gum paste even, doesn't mean that you have to do it the way that I'm doing it, right? Like, use what you have available. So if you want to use fondant with gel colors to get to the right color, it's the same ratio process and trial and error that I go through. So maybe it's like 1 drop of brown and 1 drop of gold to try to get this like tan neutrally color that we're working with as our base. So, try to piece together what you have at home. Obviously, if you have the means to be able to use the same exact products that I'm using, then I would encourage it, but it's not a necessity. But color matching is one of the harder things to do, especially when we're trying to recreate something that we have in front of us and something that's really recognizable to other people. So, while I'm trying really, really hard to make my colors exactly like these wooden ones, because I want to be able to see if I can fool you, to see if I've done my job well. Maybe you're recreating this and there isn't a cake knife, like a real one around. And so nobody would know if you were off by a shade or two, right? Like, that's kind of the beauty of what we get to do as artists is, we get to play a little bit and put our own spin on it as well, which I really love. Okay, so now that we have our sanded down piece of rice cereal treats, what I've done is pre-colored all of my modeling chocolate because it's one of those things that just, it takes a little while, right? Even when you have all of the ratios, if you're a gold member and you're downloading those, then fantastic. Even when you have those, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge to get it just right. But know that you just got to play a little, okay? All right, so what I've done is rolled out my sort of deeper wood grain color. This is more of this like base color. So we've got a sort of a tan, we have a dark brown, and then we have like an ivory color that's here. And each of them have kind of their own characteristics as well. Now, this is gonna come across as a slightly different color initially, but then I am actually going to add additional colors to it with airbrush color and some other things. So don't fret yet if you're like, oh, that doesn't match. I promise you it will match in the end. So what we need to do with our piece to make sure that this attaches is just get it a little bit wet. Now you can do that a couple of ways. You can spray this with a water bottle, which makes it really easy, get some great coverage for you. I find that works really lovely, especially for a buttercream cake. For smaller objects and things like this, where I want to make sure I have great coverage everywhere, not just like generally a good spray, I can go ahead and I just paint on either some water or some alcohol, whichever one you prefer. The alcohol is going to dry a little faster, which if we don't work fast enough to get this covered, well, then we're just going to have to reapply, which is fine. Or you can just use water. The thing that you don't want to do is saturate it so much so that, you're melting your modeling chocolate or fondant. Okay, so that's covered. And we're just going to place this right over top. Now, I just sort of go extra long with my piece. And the spot that you want to focus on first is that first bend that's in our knife. So this bend right here, you just want to make sure that's attached and there's no air bubbles that are going to start to form under there. And when we are working with something that's very flat, so our handle is very flat, and the tip of the blade is very flat, but this center part is not. So don't go in here with your smoother because you will end up creating some lines that you don't want. So just keep that in mind. And then work to your edge and just make sure that each of these pieces are adhered really well. So you can already start to see the shape is coming through just lovely. Like that's why this is so important that you start with a smooth piece. And making sure that this goes all the way down at least to the edge, if not past it just a little bit. Because this particular project has some additional layers of wood coloring that goes over top of this. That's why I'm making sure that I've got full coverage all the way down. If you want, you can absolutely fold this over and cover the bottom. And I would recommend doing that at least a little bit. You don't have to fully make this, fully cover it. Just make sure that you've got some coverage here because you don't want the rice cereal treats to show through. Not on the bottom. If somebody were to pick it up, you want it to look realistic. But don't go crazy trying to get it all fully covered. Unless, of course, you want to. That's definitely an option. Just making sure. The other option, too, is you could absolutely cover this side with chocolate if you wanted, just to, give that extra cushion. But if I'm not flipping this over for any reason, don't spend the extra time making it perfect, right? We spend so much time on our cakes in general that we have to, be mindful of how much time we are spending on the project, and don't spend time on things that either don't matter or just aren't going to be seen. So at this corner, in order to, bend this appropriately and make it look seamless, you just slice the corner and then apply pressure again to the chocolate. And again, you just want to make sure that you overlap a little bit. Doesn't have to be the whole way. You can, your choice. And I won't spend much time trying to make that, perfect either. It just is, it's not, it's the backside. Nobody's going to notice. But just so it's kind of like wrapping a package in wrapping paper. It really is. It's like, you got to fold in certain places. The problem is we can't overlap this a whole lot, so we have to trim away. And the reason for that is just simply because otherwise we'll start to build up layers and then we don't have the right thickness at that point. So folding it together, just making sure that it's attaching, overlap just a little bit if you can, and then you can press that together and then that seam holds, and so it's not going to unfold on you at all. Awesome. And then this bottom part is probably one of the harder pieces to, make work, only because it rounds. It's got that rounded corner and it tapers. So, it's a bit of a point. And so what I like to do is just squash my modeling chocolate together so that it starts to round. I'm going to flip it over so we can see the side that everyone else is going to notice. And apply a little pressure towards the rice cereal treats. And then all you have to do, I leave a little excess just in case, but all you have to do is trim around it and then just press down. So it just adheres right down. Make sure everything is attached. And then if you have any places where either it's not attaching well, or, you know, I have just a tiny little tear here, I probably cut it a little shy. Just meld it together. Again, that's another, you know, beautiful piece or beautiful characteristic about modeling chocolate, is that it really melds well to itself. It has wonderful flexibility in the way of time. All right. Then I know my sides, at least down at this bottom, are nice and straight. So I am going to just use my smoothers. And even on that little turn, I will use it. Don't push here. Keep it flush. And then switch and do the same thing on the other side. So this just allows you the ability to, you know, really get those nice, flat, smooth sides without indenting. And then same thing, you know, I'm not moving it as much as I am just applying some pressure. Okay. And then as we get to the bottom here, you can apply a little pressure up top and just round that, smooth it out. Again, you know, these wooden pieces are just sanded so smooth. Ashley did such a great job making them. They are like flawless. So just making sure that you've got really soft, super smooth edges. And then as we get to the point here, I left a little excess on purpose, partly because I wanted to extend it a little bit to get a pointier tip. But I am literally just using a little bit of pressure from the side. Oh. So see, this is the beauty too, is you guys get to see me fix errors along the way, which that was always how I learned the most, is, you know, when I make a little error, a little flaw, that's how you learn. So I love it when I make mistakes because I know I've learned something. I don't like making mistakes with you guys, that's for sure, but I love just being able to, you know, show you how to fix something if it goes wrong. I'll tell you what's happening here. The rice cereal treats are not something that likes to have things stuck onto it. That's why the chocolate is such an important piece here, is coating it in chocolate. Not only does it give you a smooth surface, but it also gives you something that will attach well to it. So cover the bottom too, and you'll find that it'll stick and hold just a little bit easier. And then I'm just gonna, use my favorite tool of all, my fingers. These are the best things that you can do for yourself. Okay, I'm gonna set that aside and let it just firm up a little bit. So working with modeling chocolate, things warm up, your hands get hot, things start to soften. So I'm just gonna let that go. I'm gonna try really hard not to touch it. That's always the hardest part, is patience. Me and patience, we don't get along very well. I'm always trying to do things in a hurry and get through it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so what I have done here is modeled together a little bit of white, a little bit of sand, and then I took a little bit of this leftover color, and I marbled that into my coloring as well. And I know that I need a certain width in order to cover this appropriately. So it kind of depends on, you know, how big your item is itself. If we're using this item, you know, just as a general rule, it was about 2 inches to get to that other side. And of course, it depends. This is a little thicker down here because of the way that this tapers at the neck of it. So I just found my largest spot, which was the 2 inches, 2 1/4 there. And so I make all of this 2 1/4 inches, and we're going to meld these together. So let me just grab just one more thing here. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to mark where my 2 is so that I can add on that little extra. It's not much, but we don't want to run out. Okay, so now I've got 2 1/4 inches across on this one. And I'm going to do the same thing down here, but not at the top, because this is actually a little longer than 2 1/4, just barely, but it is longer. And so I'm actually just going to leave this one, and I'll show you what we do in order to make this work. So each of these little spaces, this space is 1 inch, this is a 1/2 inch, then 1 inch, you get the pattern. So what I'm going to do is actually cut 1 inch strips of my dark brown. And again, my dark brown is a combination of dark brown. It's the chocolate brown modeling chocolate from Satin Ice, a little bit of the leftover from this. And then just the way that you marble it is really key to getting the right wood grain texture. So if you are looking for something that has a lot of striations, you're doing a lot of folding. You don't want to mix and knead it. You have got to do it in a fashion where you're really elongating it. You have lots of stretch and pull to each of these colors to kind of, you know, roll them in logs, put them together, stretch them out, overlap them again. And so it's really a stacking process rather than kneading it together like when we're trying to, you know, warm a piece of fondant up so that it's pliable. All right, so little bit of alcohol again. Now, I do recommend using high-proof alcohol or lemon extract here simply because it dries quickly. And so you're going to end up with a tacky surface rather than a wet surface. And I'm just putting it right on the edge. I'm going to set my ruler next to it. And this is going to give me a little guide now. I have 1 inch, then I need the 1/2 inch. Just to line all of these up. And do your best to, you know, make them as straight as possible. They're not going to, you know, they don't have to be perfect. This is, you know, again, this is not the most precise craft project. It doesn't have to be a precise project. This can just be a very laid back, not overly complicated piece as well, your choice. Questions so far? So basically I'm lining this up every 1/2 inch. I'm a little off, so let me readjust that one. Okay. And you can even go thinner with these if you need to. You know, you don't want super thick pieces. I would go as thin as you can because we're going to roll this just a little bit to incorporate them together. And the thicker they are, you know, the more stretch and, you know, shifting they're going to do. Okay, so that's basically our piece here that we're trying to recreate. Okay. And then what you want to do is roll just a little bit. And I'm only going to roll out and then, across the top. I am not rolling this way. I'm not rolling at an angle. I want to try to keep these lines as straight as I can. So I'm starting with super, super light pressure, just trying to get those two combined together. We don't want any, real stretch happening, even though that's the nature of rolling. That's kind of the process that happens. But this is perfectly smooth, and so the goal is to try to get it as smooth as you can. And you'll see that even moving in just, one single direction, I'm still getting some stretch, but that's okay. I'll show you how to fix it. Okay, so then you just come back in and trim up your edge. I promise, just gently, you only want to go through that dark brown. Takes a little finessing. I probably could have rolled, definitely could have rolled thinner. Well, I guess I should say started thinner. My brown should have been thinner. So you just got to finesse it just the right amount. And then it should just roll back. Like I said, I have had a morning, you guys. I'm not even going to get into all of it, but yeah, it's just been one thing after another. Sometimes we have those, we have those days. It is one of those days. So you can see that you can trim this up fairly easily. I'm basically just doing one side to try to get it to level out, but you can do both. Okay, there we go. And then just this, I'm going to do this last one, and then we'll move on. So, take your time, get these nice and straight, get each of your pieces rolled really thin. I rolled these out earlier today so that I obviously could do this with you guys. And in my mind was like, okay, great. I will actually roll this out a little more so that way it doesn't dry out, right? Like we always have in our head, like what we think might be best. Yeah, forgot. All right, what questions do you have so far? This is a really cool project. So if of course you have the object you're trying to recreate, set it next to it so that you can do that. That gives you a slightly more ability to, get it just right. If you have the object. If you don't have the object, it's okay. And then again, just apply a little pressure very gently, just trying to get each of those sections adhered nicely. And then at the front here, again, all of this is fairly smooth. So you just want to smooth it down, get it going. And even if there's a little bit of curvature to it, that's okay. You just want the seam where it meets to be fairly flat. A little bit more alcohol underneath just to adhere it. And then we're going to trim it. Now you could try to trim this in advance. Before applying it. It does get a little tricky though, because you've got some change in height of this particular object, but you definitely could try. So all I do in this case is I use my knife at an angle, make sure everything is attached. I'm wondering if you guys can see that. Let's try this. I'm going to angle it so you can see. Hopefully that's better. Okay, and then I'm just going to take a knife straight across, basically right where that ivory was. Because that was my measure. You know, I measured that first. Okay. There's one side and the other. I probably use my smoothers for more than just smoothing, more often than I'd like to admit, but they're great little tools. All right, where are we at with questions? Any? This part of the process is definitely a bit more exact in the sense of, you know, you want to cut this as straight as you can, but you can always go back and touch it up if you need to. You can always push a little bit more as well. So, you know, sometimes, you know, I cut shy and I've got to change things up a little bit. All right, so for this end, again, it's just a matter of squashing it together. And then I'm just going to cut across, squash a little more. Okay. And then you can finesse it. You know, take your time, finesse this more than what I'm doing. Because I want to be able to show you how to texture and color some of these details. So one of the things that you'll notice here is this almost has like a green hue to it. It definitely is more green than pink or red. And so that's what I'm seeing here. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking this is a little too pink, too it just doesn't quite have the right color tone. Hopefully, wrong side. Okay, so what I've done, this is what I usually do for trying to get some additional colors. I just put it on a piece of parchment with airbrush color, or you can use a combination of gel color and a little bit of alcohol. And I, of course, always add in a little bit of just straight up alcohol, even with airbrush colors, just to try to get it going once it's dried out. So I have a tendency to save my pieces of paper until I'm done with a project, because you never know if you're going to need to add more coloring. And in this case, obviously, I'm recreating something that I've done, you know, a little while ago. So. Sam is asking, have you ever made a cake that looks like Theo? I have not. That's a great question though, Sam. I have made many a dog cakes. I have not made Theo, and with good reason. I can't stand making dog cakes because then you have to cut into your dog. Like, who wants to cut their dog? I don't know why. I just really struggle with that. So it's not that I don't want to. It's really more that I just don't want to cut my dog. It kind of freaks me out. Okay, so this brush, this is a fan brush, and it's kind of, you know, chunk up a little bit. That's just kind of naturally what starts to happen to it. And a little bit of brown airbrush color and some avocado green is what I'm using here. And that just creates those striations. I hope that that comes through on camera. It's just got a little bit of striation to it. It, you know, just has a really great tone of color. You can also use just a little bit of orange or brown, whichever one. Maybe even if you have like gold or ivory, that works really well also. So that's what I have going here. I'm just going to bring in a little bit more of that like darker brown with just a hint of the green. And, sometimes what I will do is I will actually turn my fan brush and just get like a line or two that goes through just to be able to, create a slightly different grain. So painting on top of what we already marbled is a really great way to piece that together. One of the things I want to show you in regards to this wood is there's a lot of ways that you can do this. So one way is painting, like what we've just done, using a very fine tip brush with some of this darker color. I actually really love the new fine tip markers. Satin Ice put these out and they're just fabulous. They have just this like perfect brown tone, and it's a super fine tip, which is really hard to be able to accomplish with just a straight up paintbrush. So being able to, use a marker, it's more comfortable, right? Like that's kind of the thing that I love about it, is it's more comfortable. And you're just going to kind of crisscross a little bit at the bottom. And then you want to like jiggle it just a little bit, right? You don't want a straight line going all the way. Totally fine as long as there's a little wiggle in it. But you need to just kind of create some of these little ridges that are coming through with some of the wood grain that's here. And now, obviously, you'd want to do this throughout the entire piece. So all the way down. And one of the last things that I want to show you is, especially in this piece, like it's really got all sorts of different patterns, mostly because of the way that the grain was cut at an angle and smoothed down. But using just some really pointy scissors, I'm just going to go in and drag a little bit. And what that does is create just those little lighter pieces of color that you're seeing come through. And even though this is creating a little bit of texture, it's not a ton of texture. It's really just like scraping that top edge of modeling chocolate. And I see we have a question from Kathy. Where do you get your modeling chocolate and small rolling pin? And so the craft stores are our friend these days. I started cake decorating a long, long time ago, close to, oh gosh, I was 23, I'm 46, so 23 years ago is when I started that. And we didn't have a whole lot to choose from. We had Wilton, and that was it. And Wilton has its place in our industry. I love Wilton. I feel fortunate today that we have a lot more options. So you can actually find Satin Ice modeling chocolate in your local craft store. So Michael's has this, and even I believe Hobby Lobby, if I am not mistaken. So yeah, I mean, I think that you definitely can get your hands on these items. Same thing with these rolling pins. The rolling pin, this is actually in the clay section. So feel free to go outside of the cake aisle a little bit, find some fun things. Purple's my favorite color, if you didn't know that, by all my tools. But yes, that's one of the things that I really love. And so I always go outside of the cake aisle to find what I need. And then let's see, Sam is saying, how do you create realistic wood texture on the modeling chocolate? Yeah, I mean, I hope that I answered that with my little tool here, Sam. I'll show you one more piece that is really helpful. So just a piece of paper towel folded a few times to get yourself like a little, 1-inch span or whatever. A little bit of alcohol, and this is a little bit of brown.
So you can see that just kind of tapping it is going to give me a little bit more of a look that is more similar to this. So just a little tap. You could probably use a sponge as well, but we all have paper towels around. And that's what's great is that the paper towels have a little bit of texture. And so, don't hesitate to rotate and kind of get a new piece here and there if you feel like it's just coming down as, one little piece. But that is how you get a little bit more color gradient going. So it's starting to get closer and closer, which I think is, trying to get us to where we need to be. I need to do what I call a little bit more scratching. I need to get a little bit more of that wood texture in there. And Dina, yes, this is the real wood. This is the cake that I'm working on. So it's definitely a work in progress still. Just trying to show some of the little techniques so that you can see it. And then the other thing that you can do is just using your finger, get rid of some of those little extra pieces that come off when you're doing this part. Now, again, I need to spend a lot more time scraping and getting in here and really adding some of that depth and texture. I want to show you the process so you know what you need to do, but know that you'll have to work at this a little bit longer. Kat has a great question, which is, what's the best advice for making a cake look real? My 100% best advice for making a cake look real is keep working, keep trying, keep doing it, because it is so hard. You aren't going to just figure it out. It's not just going to happen. You got to keep trying and trying and trying and trying and try some more and play. A trial and error is the absolute best thing that I can recommend. I have, like I said, 23-ish years of doing this. So, I still play a lot. You guys can see the process is happening here for me live. Like I am, while I have done, obviously I have made this cake so I can make the tutorial for you. I have continued to keep revamping and trying to make more, more texture or more variation, or adding, a little bit of dust to try to pull in some of that lighter, kind of matte finish. So you can kind of see there are differences from the first one I made to the second one I made. And now this one, obviously, let's not count this one because this is really not finished. It needs a lot more fine tuning, but at least you get the concept behind what I'm doing here. So yeah, you just got to keep going, keep trying different things, keep experimenting. I know that my cake knives are not the exact same color as the wooden ones that are the real object, but I really think if you took away the real ones, you probably wouldn't notice which one is the actual wooden piece and which one is a cake, right? I just think that it's one of those things that you got to keep working, you got to keep trying, keep trying to sort out, how to get that color just right. And I just really think for the most part, we are in an industry where creativity is key. I mean, keep trying to push yourself, trying to do something a little bit different and do it better each time, and really just keep working. I don't know. I mean, it's such a hard question to answer because I really just kind of get in this zone of playing. That's the best description I can give you is play. Play, 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 play with your food. I know I can't be the only one that was told don't play with your food, just eat it. But truly, I think being able to play and try different things, try different mediums. If you've never played with modeling chocolate before, go get some, play with it, see what it does, compare it, have a piece of fondant in one hand and a piece of modeling chocolate in your other hand, and play with them and see what they do. Does one tear? Does one just smush? Does one, have a really soft texture, or is one firm? So, when you're then deciding what to use to make a more realistic looking wood grain, you've got to kind of know what each of your products will do for you. I know that trying to paint with a super fine tip paintbrush, I was trying to look and see if I even brought it with me. I don't even have it up here right now. My main kitchen is downstairs, guys. In that kitchen, Theo's not allowed in. So this is just my pretty kitchen. This is the really pretty one. But trying to, get a really fine tip using a paintbrush, it's doable, right? Like you just need a fine tip brush. But if there's a product out there that will make your life a little easier, where you don't have to mix the color of paint that you're going to use and then try to use it, and you have something at your fingertips like a marker, that's gold. That saves time, it saves energy, it saves your thought process a little bit, and just kind of helps get things going in the right direction a little easier. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed making this project with me. This is such a unique piece. I don't think a lot of people make wooden cake utensils out of rice cereal treats and modeling chocolate, edible mediums. But it definitely was a fun one to tackle for Cake or Fake. And I hope you've learned a lot. That's, of course, always our goal here at Creative Cake Design, is to present you with some challenges and see if I can get there, then I promise you can get there too. It really is just a matter of trial and error. So if you're a gold member, I encourage you to stick around. We'll be going live at 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain Time with lots of wood grain textures. I'm going to show you a variety of ways to be able to create wood grain texture that is not just the one that we just did. Follow us on social media. Check us out next month. I think we're making bunnies next month. This one's going to be a really interesting one and very difficult and challenging. So as always, thank you for joining Creative Cake Design, and be creative.